Right now, somewhere in your bathroom, there's a roll of soft, quilted, probably lavender-scented toilet paper just waiting for you. You didn't think twice about it this morning. You never do. Here's the thing, though. That roll is basically brand new. Toilet paper as we know it has only been around for about 150 years. Humans, on the other hand, have been pooping for roughly 300,000 years. So what happened for the other 299,850 of them? Buckle up, because some of the answers are genius, and some of them are going to make you hug your toilet paper a little tighter tonight. Now, you'd think ancient people just figured it out and moved on with their lives, but when you actually dig into the history, and archaeologists really have dug into this, you find something kind of wild. Almost every civilization on Earth, completely independent of each other, split into one of two camps. There were the wipers and there were the washers. And which camp you were born into, it didn't just affect your bathroom routine. It shaped table manners, handshakes, and even how certain cultures viewed left-handed people. We're going to get to all of it. Let's start with the wipers, because honestly, they went through it. For most of human history, the plan was simple. Grab whatever's nearby. Leaves, grass, a smooth rock if you were lucky enough to find one. That's it. That's the whole system. And look, on paper that sounds fine. Nature's basically handing you free supplies. Except here's the catch. Nature doesn't label its leaves. You had no idea if you just grabbed a nice soft plant or a fistful of poison ivy. Step 1 of ancient hygiene was basically a coin flip, and step 2 was regret. So naturally, humans being humans, someone eventually thought, okay, we need a system. And that's where things start getting interesting. The ancient Greeks upgraded from random leaves to smooth, rounded pieces of pottery called pessoi, basically little ceramic discs, shaped specifically for the job. There was even a Greek saying floating around that 3 stones were all you really needed to get the job done, frugal and efficient, very on brand for a culture obsessed with philosophy and moderation. But here's the part that turns this into an actual plot twist. Sometimes, instead of a plain piece of pottery, Greeks used broken shards called ostraca, the same kind of pottery pieces used in their voting system to banish unpopular citizens from the city. And every once in a while, someone would write the name of a personal enemy on that shard before using it. Let that sink in for a second. Somewhere in ancient Greece, someone's morning routine was wake up, use the bathroom, and personally disrespect my worst enemy in the process. That's not hygiene. That's revenge with extra steps. Rome took things somewhere even more intense. Roman public bathrooms weren't private little stalls like today. They were long stone benches with a row of holes cut into them. No dividers, no privacy. You just sat shoulder to shoulder with total strangers doing the exact same thing you were doing. And instead of everyone bringing their own supplies, there was a shared tool called a tersorium, basically a sponge attached to the end of a stick. It sat in a bucket of salt water or vinegar in the middle of the room. You'd use it, rinse it in the bucket, and then set it back down for the next person to use. Yes, the next person. If you're currently making a face, you are having a completely normal human reaction. Wealthier Romans, by the way, figured this out pretty quickly and had private toilets with their own personal sponge. Thank you very much. Because apparently, even 2,000 years ago, rich people knew not to share the group sponge. Let's fast forward a couple thousand years and jump continents, because the story gets weirdly practical here. On American farms, especially in the 1700s and 1800s, the go-to tool was the humble corn cob, and honestly, it wasn't a bad choice. Corn cobs were everywhere if you were farming. They had a bit of texture, and you could rotate them or reuse a spot on them, which, sorry, is more information than you probably needed, but here we are. Here's the twist, though. Once actual toilet paper started showing up in stores, you'd think everyone would immediately switch over, right? Nope, a lot of people stuck with their corn cobs anyway. They were just used to it. Some people genuinely preferred it. Before toilet paper became common in American homes, people were also tearing pages out of old newspapers, and, this one's a classic, using the Sears mail order catalog. Every page ripped out was one less thing to read next time you were bored on the toilet, which honestly might be the original content shortage. Quick one here, because sometimes the answer really is just deal with what's in front of you. In the winter months, some Native American communities used snow. Cold, sure, but effective, and always available when you're out in the elements with nothing else around. The rest of the year, it was back to leaves from whatever plants were nearby. Efficient, freezing, moving on. Japan, the most intense method on the list. Okay, if you thought the Roman shared sponge was as wild as this list gets, nope, Japan has entered the chat. In 8th century Japan, people used a wooden stick called a chugi, and this wasn't just for the outside cleanup. It was designed to clean inside as well. Yeah, read that again if you need to. Out of every method we've covered, the stones, the sponge, the corn cob, this one might genuinely be the most extreme, and it makes you wonder, was there ever a better way? Turns out, an entire half of the ancient world was already doing something completely different.
Remember those two camps I mentioned at the very start, wipers and washers? This is where we finally meet team number 2. While Greece, Rome, Japan, and early America were all wiping in various creative and horrifying ways, huge parts of the world, the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia, were doing something totally different. They were washing with water, using their left hand as the standard method of cleaning up. And this one detail actually explains something you've probably noticed without ever knowing why. In cultures that practiced this, the left hand was considered the unclean hand, reserved specifically for hygiene. The right hand was for eating, greeting people, and shaking hands. That's genuinely where the social norm of only shaking hands with your right hand comes from in a lot of the world. One ancient bathroom habit still showing up in how people greet each other today. Even parts of Europe eventually leaned into the washing method. By the Renaissance, wealthier households were using bidets, a dedicated wash basin kept right next to the bedroom, treated as a mandatory second step after using the chamber pot. So while one half of the world was out here inventing sponge-on-a-stick technology, the other half had already landed on something a lot closer to what modern bidets do today. Now here's where it gets almost unfair, because one country was just way ahead of everyone else. Paper itself was invented in China around the 2nd century BC, and the earliest written mention we have of paper being used specifically for bathroom cleanup shows up in the writings of a Chinese scholar from the 6th century AD, who apparently had a very strong opinion about which paper was too sacred to use for that purpose. But it doesn't stop there. By the 1390s, during the Chinese imperial court, workers were mass-producing giant perfumed sheets of paper specifically for the royal family to use in the bathroom. 2 feet by 3 feet, scented, soft. Basically a luxury spa product, while most of the rest of the planet was still working with sponges, corn cobs, or wooden sticks. Let that scale sink in for a second. China had actual, comfortable, purpose-made toilet paper roughly 500 years before the Western world even attempted anything close to it. So when did the rest of the world actually get its act together? Not until 1857. That's when an American inventor named Joseph Gayeti introduced the first commercially packaged toilet paper in the United States, specifically marketed as medicated paper to save people from the damage caused by newspaper, corn cobs, and other rough improvised options people had been using for generations. 500 years. That's the gap between Chinese royalty enjoying scented paper and the average American finally being able to buy a proper pack of toilet paper at a store. So next time you grab that roll without even thinking about it, take 1 second to appreciate what you're actually holding. That soft, quick, boring little object represents the end of a several 100,000-year-long group project involving pottery insults, shared sponges, snow, corn cobs, wooden sticks, in one country that quietly had this figured out centuries before anyone else caught up. Toilet paper isn't just a household item, it's basically the finish line of one of the longest, weirdest problem-solving streaks in human history. So, be honest, out of everything on this list, which method do you think you could actually survive? Drop your answer in the comments because I genuinely want to know who out there is bold enough to pick the sponge on a stick.